Hey everybody, welcome to the next project. We are working on yet another Jackson guitar, but this is a mini guitar. This is like, what, a 3/4 scale guitar or something like that? I don't actually know what the scale length is yet. We're going to find that out in just a moment. I was given this and asked to get it set up so it is ready for a new player. We want the new player to not have to struggle with a guitar that is way out of whack. Well, let's give this a good inspection once over, see what it needs to tune it up to make it play right as we start the next project. Let's just jump right in and say, this is a cute little guitar. It's so cute. And yet, it's a little bit ornery. It doesn't want to be right. There's something wrong with this guitar. Cute and evil, perhaps. I'm going through the steps, giving it a quick once-over inspection, taking notes, finding all sorts of weird little things. You know, it's probably produced pretty fast at a factory, and they get it close, put it in a box, ship it out the door, and eventually it ends up on a bench like this. So we're going through finding some weird little things. The string alignment over the neck wasn't very good. It has 3 screws holding the neck in, which, you know, some people think is great. I think maybe there could be one more screw added. So we got the string alignment kind of tweaked, forced it to where it needed to be. Checked all the frets. They're high, low, everywhere they need to go. Checked the bridge. It's pretty much flat. The nut was high. The action was high. The relief was extreme. It had it all going on. So it's time to start troubleshooting. Well, I realized there were high and low fret spots all over. So I grabbed a feeler gauge. This is a 2/1000 of an inch feeler gauge. So not thick, not thin. I mean, actually it is pretty thin, but it was easily sliding under the center of a lot of the frets, you know, the center of the crown. So I took my little fret setting tool, which is just a block of ebony and a hammer, gave a couple of them a whack, and it really didn't help. So I grabbed my homemade version of the Stumac jaws, clamped it down, and while they were clamped, the gap went away, and as soon as I took the clamp off, they were springing back. No, they're not stainless steel frets, but they apparently had enough over radius, and they just didn't want to stay in the slots. So we're hatching a plan and thinking that this simple little 1-hour tune-up setup is going to be an all-day job. My OCD kicked in, and I decided just to pull the neck off, wrenched on the truss rod a little bit, got the neck straightened out. I was whacking on the back to help make sure the truss rod was relaxed and loose. Did a quick check over the top of the frets to see where they're at. I also used the notch straight edge on the fingerboard itself, and yes, there was a difference. A little bit of thin super glue, and the jaws clamp again, clamp it in place, shot it with some accelerator to set the frets, and ended up going down the whole fingerboard doing this process. I did not use wax on the fingerboard because I knew I was going to be cleaning it up afterwards. I used a little bit of acetone after things were clamped and scraped away. Got all the residual super glue off of there, and then later on we'll see I did clean up the neck after I did a bunch of other work. Oh boy. So you can't even see where I glued the frets in. You know, there's a number of ways to do it. I thought about putting a little bit of wax on the fingerboard, but the problem was I wanted to be sure that I could get glue under the frets. And if I accidentally got wax in the way, then the glue wouldn't get under the frets. So I had to roll the dice and just kind of go along this way. But it all worked out. We were able to get all of the frets glued down. Nice, clamped tight. With all the frets glued and clamped in place, I'm running down the board again, looking for high spots, and it's a lot better than it was before. Here I'm using the Fret Guru XT, which I think is like a 9-in-1 kind of tool. It's a monster of a tool. It does a bunch of different things. It's like a fret rocker on steroids. Going over to a flat leveling beam, and this is actually a precision level that had been cut down. I have one half of it for guitar length necks, and the other half of it will work on bass necks. It's a little bit longer offcut. So I'm hitting it with 320 grit paper and just taking down the high spots, taking the highs down to meet the lows. Again, using the Fret Guru fret rocker, basically. Looking for things and looking for those weird little spots that just still aren't quite right. And we do fix that all up. So before I get around to putting the neck back on, I realized there was a little chunk of a shim. I mean, just like a sliver. And I was like, that's not good for the neck and it's not really good for stability. So I made, we'll call it a half shim. I couldn't find my paper punch, so I used a metal punch, punched a couple holes in it, and it will bridge along the rear two screws so it evens out the pressure of the screws in the pocket. A full shim would be better, but here we are. Actually, it'd be better not to have a shim in there at all, but it is the way it is. So, as we are finding, there's a number of little things wrong with this guitar. First, you could get it tuned, but it was never really quite in tune. Fret a chord, and it always sounded a little sour, no matter where you were at. Thought maybe it was the bridge. I checked that, and it had no radius to it, so we're going to fix that. So then I started checking the frets, and I found a couple frets that seemed high in the middle, like they weren't completely seated. Wrapped on them with my wooden fret setting punch and a hammer, and they'd go down, but they'd come right back up. So like they had more radius than they needed, and they weren't really sticking in the fret slots. Pulled the neck off and clamped and glued all the frets in. I was only going to do a couple, but I ended up just doing all of them as we're seeing. Then I zeroed the neck, got it perfectly flat, the fingerboard itself, put the notch straight edge over it, leveled all the frets, and then did a little bit of fall away from about the 12th on to the end, which this has 24 frets. I don't know who has little bitty fingers like that, maybe 3-year-olds. My current process includes doing an understring, under tension leveling at this point. Strings on, tuned up to pitch. The neck relief is set where we want it. It's 2 to 4 thousandths. So I'll probably try that now. It'll be a quick process because we did do all of our flat leveling already on this particular guitar. So if we take off anything with understring leveling, it's going to be just a little hint here and there across the way. Some people will say that it doesn't work. It's a hoax. It's not a real thing. And actually, it does catch a lot of irregularities that you don't have when your neck is just cranked straight. As soon as you put the strings on and add compression and the upward bow that the strings cause, the neck sometimes will start to distort ever so slightly. You can't really see it, but surprisingly, when you run a beam over it, you start to find things. So anyway, we're going to take a quick look at that as we continue the next project. So after the painful realization that this was not a quick setup, I decided to just go all out. The neck has been flat leveled. All of the frets are nice and true to each other. Strung it up. It's understring tension now. And now we're going to do the understring under tension leveling once again, just to see if we can catch any other little spots, any other little high spots. And basically what we end up doing is knocking the high spot down to the rest of the frets, hopefully. And it really didn't take much. There were only a couple little spots that were a little questionable. So this process went pretty fast. Again, I'm using 320 grit paper on the katana beam, and it works pretty well. It gets right in under the strings. So I have a homemade string jack that I put in there at the nut, and it lifts all the strings up at one time. So I'm able to get in between the strings and under the strings and do this little bit of leveling. So still experimenting with this process a bit. And again, I'm really impressed by what it does. Having done stuff like this for a number of years and never done this understring process, there is a big difference. It's like fine tuning everything. It's the icing on the cake kind of deal. So anyway, checking out a few fretted chords here and chromatic runs and all that stuff again. Finding those little improvements, but what is up with the nut? Nuts. I'm just going to tell you right up front, I spent a bunch of time getting the string height all down to where it was pretty good and still had trouble with this nut. It is some type of plastic. It's hard, but it's kind of gummy. And I worked on all the fret slots, got the strings down to where they needed to be. And the slots were wide enough too, but the strings still wanted to just kind of hang up in there. So later on, I took another step and replaced the nut, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The process here, I'm using a feeler gauge, and I went from 13 up to 18 thousandths. So the high E was a 13 thousandth space over the first fret on up to the low E, which I ended up putting roughly 18 thousandths between the top of the first fret and the bottom of the string. And, did more experimenting and testing and just really wasn't completely happy. It should play better than it does at this point, but I have to take steps. The neck comes off again, and I go back through the process of bringing a crown back to all these frets. These are nickel frets, and I grabbed my bag of tricks, and I'm going through all the tools that I have. I keep testing and retesting, hoping to stumble on something new that I've missed before and have a realization that I'm really stupid and I've been doing it wrong all this time. And I do definitely have those moments. Here I'm using the Fret Guru Dagger, which is a steel cut tooth file, not a diamond file. And it does a pretty good job on these nickel frets. It has a concave file, so it cuts on both sides of the fret at once. Here I'm using the Tosicam file, which is similar. And jumping in and using the Music Nomad S file, brain fart. And following it up with the Fret Guru Dagger. And then, at the end of the day, big sigh, went back over everything with the Fret Guru Diamond Dagger, a little bit of cutting fluid on it, cleaned everything up. So we're getting close. The fretboard and the neck are about where they need to be. Almost. Some of you have seen these tools on my bench and in my projects before, and it's a tool that I'm working through. I'm on version 19 right now. I call it the grip, and it's just a sandpaper holder, so I can do polish sanding to the frets. After I'm done with my leveling and my crowning, I roll up a piece of sandpaper like this, and I can put a kink in one end of the paper, and it slides into the spool. And the other end that's rolled up slides into the main housing, and I just kind of scooch it all together, and it is ready to go to work. And the spool has a little thumb knob on it, so I can do a little bit of sanding to work out my file marks and my crowning marks, and it starts the polishing process. And then once I've sanded my fret to where I like it, I can twist the little knob, and it advances the paper just a little bit. Then I move on to the next fret. And I went down the board. I started with 800 grit paper, I believe it was, and then went up to 1200 grit paper. And then from there, we were going to move on to actual polishing. But this does a pretty nice job. Really, if you hit this with 1200 or 15 or 2000 grit just with this tool, you probably wouldn't need to polish at all. Now, the frets are going to be smooth enough that the strings would slide on them and life would be good. They're shiny the way they are. Time to polish up our frets. They are leveled, recrowned, and sanded using our grip sanding tool, which this is version 19, not yet released at the time of this video, but probably about the time of this video it's going to get released. Working pretty well. Works on the same principle as 17 and 18. But we're ready to polish. Going to use some Mother's Mag polish, but pretty much any fine metal polish should work. Somebody told me toothpaste will work too. I haven't tried that. Probably won't try it today. I do need to brush my teeth though. Drinking coffee. Yep. So we're going to polish up the frets, and then we're going to start putting this back together. Going to adjust it so it's pretty close to flat with just a smidge of relief. We'll get to that when we get to that as we continue the next project. A little bit of fingerboard polishing. Got my cordless drill out with a buffing wheel on it and gave the whole fingerboard a once over with that. And we're following that up with some Howard's Feed and Wax. It's just a wood conditioner. And we got that rubbed in and rubbed off. And everything's looking pretty good. About as far as we're going to go with this one. It's time to start putting things together, and I grab out the beeswax and gonna drop the neck or the body onto the neck into the body. Put a little bit of wax on the threads, drop those into the 3 holes because we only have 3 screws. And here's a trick. You don't need neck inserts if your neck wood is decent and you learn how to screw properly. You learn how to install screws properly. There we go. So I back the screw out until it drops into the hole that's already got threads in it. So go backwards, then we go forwards. And you'll be able to hear the click. There it is. Well, we've got it all strung up, tuned, intonated, relief set at 3/1000 all the way across the board. It's looking pretty good. I was trying to keep the relief very, very low. Ideally, if you can get it to play good there, then great. But anyway, we're at 3/1000, which is like, a human hair thickness relief. You've probably all heard tune in playing position, and yes, that is a thing. And you might be like, it doesn't make much difference. Well, it can. It can make like 20 cents difference, at least on this guitar. That's quite a bit. And we got it all tuned up, and it's playable. Action's really low. We're 8 to 9/10 of a millimeter on the high E, 1.1 or 2 millimeters on the low E. You get jangle on the strings if you play hard, but no fret buzz. Clean. Bad playing. Got some tuning stability issues, and it's largely up here. Now these feel solid and everything. The high E's definitely got a rotational problem. It turns good and then it binds, and then it'll turn good and binds. It could be a combination of tuners and scale length and stars not being in a line and everything else. I do have a brand new set of Geiger locking tuners, which I think would be a really good upgrade to this guitar, but I'm not sure if we need to go there as we continue the next project. We've reached the end of the work on this Jackson Dinky Minion. This is a short scale, 3/4 scale guitar, 22.5 inch scale length, 572 millimeters, I believe that is. 24 frets. That's a whole lot of frets in a little bitty space. Fought with the original nut. I did a bunch of work on it, and the strings are still trying to hang up in it for some reason. We also addressed the bridge, which was high and set flat pretty much. And so we've got a radius on that, got it down. We've got really good relief and string action. Just a hair over a millimeter on the bass side and just a hair under a millimeter on the treble side. But anyway, we did all that work, and it definitely played and tuned better. Then I realized, hey, I have this thing that's not meant for the scale length, but let's give it a try. And it is a Hosco SOS, which is sound offset spacer. What it is, it goes between the nut and the first fret, butts right up against the nut, and it's kind of like a faux compensated nut. It adjusts the string length up here just a little bit, just like your bridge does down here. And what that's supposed to do is help the tuning of the frets up in this area, or the strings up in this area, and your bridge is really working down in this area. So together they kind of meet in the middle. And as soon as I slid it in without even retuning it, I started strumming it, and I was like, wow, I can hear the difference. My hearing's not so good, and I'm not a good player, but now it's really good. It plays in tune here and here and here and here, here, and even way up here where I can't get my fingers to fit in there. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate that. Leave comments. I love hearing from everybody all around the world. Hit the thumbs up button. Lets YouTube know you love stuff like this. Ring the bell for future notifications. That might also take you to a subscription link if you're not subscribed. I'm not really sure how that works. Anyway, take care of yourself and those around you. Until next time, bye.